Our second lecturer for under the topic participation is Susanne Hofmann. Susanne Hofmann is the founder and director of Berlin Architecture Office Die Baupiloten, BDA, an interdisciplinary practice specializing in education, cultural and housing projects. She studied architecture in Munich at the Academy of Fine Arts as well as the Technical University. She studied at the AA in London afterwards and got her diploma in 1992. Ever since, research, teaching and practical work have been connected and still are, I think. We're faster, we're getting faster. From 1987 to 97, she worked as a project architect for various architecture practices, among them Spangenberg, Saarbruch-Hatten in Berlin, Alsop and Lyle Architects in London. 1996 to 9, Susanne Hofmann held a research and teaching post at the University of Westminster in London, at the TU Berlin and the HAW Hamburg, the University for Applied Science. In 2008, she was a scholar at the School of Architecture and Design in Melbourne. And the far end of the world has obviously developed quite a power of attraction. In 2012, she became a visiting professor at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. In the same year, she got her doctorate, Atmosphere as Participatory Design Strategy. From 2009 to 2015, Susanne Hofmann was the interim professor for the Department of Participatory Design and Construction, Housing and Cultural Buildings at the Technical University in Berlin. She currently serves as guest professor at the University of Vienna, a position she holds since 2016. In 2001, she founded the architecture practice Baupiloten, which from 3 to 14 turned into the study research project Die Baupiloten at the TU Berlin. Susanne Hofmann is concentrating on educational architecture, driven by an ecological, social and participative agenda. Participation Makes Architecture is the title of one of her publications, in which she illustrates how user participation can be successfully and productively implemented and integrated into the architectural design process. Whatever we do involve the user, is the focal point of her work. Please welcome Susanne. I'm very much looking forward to your lecture.
Yeah, great to be here in this amazing circle of women architects. We are a core of around 10 architects at the moment and engineers. We collaborate also with various designers, and in our office there is also a system designer, which is quite important for our participatory project. Fabienne, I hope you're not too unhappy to hear me talking about and still using this word participation. There are very many interpretations what participation is, so I'm very much aware that this is a difficult word. And we started to work with kids in 2002, and by now our participatory work is getting much more complex, very diverse stakeholders. And for example, here you see a moment, it was quite a fast moment of developing a neighborhood in Adlershof, because nobody really has time, but everybody wants to be part of the process and try to shape their environment. And that's exactly what my big challenge in architecture is, to give people the chance to actively participate in shaping their future living environment and to find for them a common ground of dialogue on an equal terms. And that's very important for us, that we all have our different expertise and get together on this equal exchange. Our work is really like talking to it's very similar to talking to a private client. The big difference is it might be 1,000 people we have to handle and work with. Architecture is participation. You, funny enough, you translated the book because in German it's called Architekt macht Partizipation macht Architektur. And it was really difficult to find an English title because in German it's so fantastic because it says on the one hand architecture, power, participation, but on the other hand it says, as you translated it, participation makes architecture. So in the end we decided, no, we just call it architecture is participation. Yeah, why participate? For us really to get quite close to the desires and the demands of the people. And here I try to talk about how built spaces emerge from the desires of the user. Participatory design is for us not a grassroots democratic event. Each participatory process is a careful balance of top-down and bottom-up processes. We want to learn as much as possible of the future users and get into a positive, constructive dialogue to find this common ground, think together, and also get excited about new ideas and vision together. We, the architects, would like to get to know their needs for their environment. Yeah, however, how can we communicate? And how can they communicate their dreams, their desires? Participatory design strategies need new forms of dialogue on equal terms. The great advantage of working with atmosphere, you already mentioned the title of my dissertation, Participatory Design Strategies with the Help of Atmosphere. An atmosphere as a design tool is to give us uncertainties. And that might sound strange at first, but exactly this vagueness of atmosphere, in fact, you can quite not grab it, but it brings contingencies into the communication design process, which offers opportunities. These are ambiguous and complex conditions a participation process can throw up. And these are exactly the conditions we need to work creatively with the user and ultimately as the architect. The participatory process can mean that the architect has to surrender part of his or her control of the design or construction process. That's risky, but it does not have to mean that originality and creativity are limited. So participation means also redefining the role of the architect, but it doesn't mean that the architect is then only the person carrying out the technical implementation of users' ideas. The architect still takes the creative part. He's sort of the creative link. And what people know about the demands and desires they have for the use and experience of spaces is a potential social resource, which must be taken into account in architecture if a stronger identification of the user with their buildings is to be achieved, which in turn supports social acceptance of the architecture design. And socialist Helga Nowotny, she talks, and I really like that saying, she talks about socially robust knowledge. And depending on the ages, the social and cultural backgrounds, we developed individual models of participation. The essential components are conceptual and artistic stimuli, which have to be specifically sought outside the specific project context. Communication about atmosphere will circumvent the fixed code of the plan and make it easier to express even complex but often unconscious needs and ideas that are often very difficult to articulate. Both children and adults can playfully articulate the words they desire. Collages of found materials, of found images, painted pictures, or models, as here for the future kindergarten, but also the results of targeted planning games. We're gonna show one example more in detail. Interviews, storytelling, or film and its spatial projection can serve as such a medium. Architects have the opportunity to develop models of atmosphere from the requirements thus formulate, in which again all the stakeholders can delve into and imagine them further and thus experience them directly. Well, participation fosters needs-based design. We see our kindergarten and the space from the interior to the outside. And this is really, for us, the start of a dialectical procedure in which both children and adults can clearly articulate and also nominate sensory stimuli that are important for the environment they live in. So we are convinced that effective designing through methodically regulated decision-making. And I would like to show you in a diagram, how we work. So I have to put my glasses on. So this diagram should show how we actually work. In the middle of all our process, there's a soul, as we call them, the project family. And there's the user with the everyday knowledge and their own expert knowledge. In schools, of course, it's fantastic that we have this extra pedagogical knowledge when the user is part of the process, but kids are for us as important to be there to tell us about they like actually to be in their environment. Then of course we do have the clients with their economic feasibilities and their requirements, and we as architects, we usually do the moderation of this process, and we come in with our professional expertise to actually shape spaces. And we find the common grounds for the dialogue, observe and recording the user's everyday life to get a good feel for it, and finally do the most exciting part, the Wunschforschung, working with the people in all sorts of workshops to from there on develop visions and fresh ideas. We use quite a few methods. We in the very beginning designed together what would be the most convenient, what would be the most fun to actually work together to get to for us it's really the program and the atmospheric qualities we want to work on together to get finally to the design of the architecture. And I would like to delve into one of our tools, negotiate visions by planning games. So it's quite different from the work of the speakers before me. We sort of keep our hands more clean, so to speak. We don't get into the mud. That is one of our planning games, visionary games. In 17 steps and 19 minutes, you get to an idea, nearly an architectural concept of your future school, of your future neighborhood, of your future cultural building. And we have action cards, like leading through 17 steps. We would tell them about a possible future vision to get them into the mood of the game, to be open, to get the possibility to get away with all these prejudices which are in the head of everybody. We mainly have activity and atmosphere cards which you have to choose from all sorts of categories to bring them together, then add atmospheric qualities to get an idea in which kind of world we want to have our school. And there are always could be something like 8 players in such a game, and that's really important. There shouldn't be 8 friends who are anyway of the same opinions, but we try to get 8 different people. There should be somebody of politics, there should be some of the authorities, there should be if we are in a school, which should be school, there should be a parent, there should be a teacher, and best also the housekeeper. And so they have to negotiate, and we do often very many rounds, and each game gets a programming architectural concept, and we notice that as soon as they start choosing the activity, the discussion, a very constructive dialogue starts between the participants. And that would be, for example, one of the results of a future elementary school we have done a few weeks ago. For example, they would call it the colorful universe of encounter. It's made up of different islands, and we work with this wording which comes out of the activity and atmospheric qualities, and there would be something like an island of lively learning from each other island, and that's also we see in that game, or we can read it. That's where you should arrive at the school. Then you have an outside chilling oasis, then the diverse learning station, a Colorwood Celebrate circus. And funny enough, if you look at the results of one school, there might be 10 games at the same time, and we have 10 results, and funny enough, of one school, they're quite similar. So I just chose one more, like the Cheerful Discovery Island, and here you should arrive at the space similar to a lively rendezvous heart, where you have breakfast, meet friends, socially engage, and you will have a quiet pondering workshop where you read, where you ponder, where you do math, where you develop project, and a lively research laboratory, creative crafting oasis, outside frolicking around meadow, and so on and so on. And we can read from these results, bringing together all the game islands results, where we would evaluate all the games and would work out, okay, the school needs a rendezvous heart, a pondering workshop, a learning laboratory. And from there on, we develop a next kind of game where we get deeper into their ideas and wishes, and work from these results again, so to speak, bubble diagrams, what is, I guess, quite more familiar for us as architects. And we actually could develop out of these games quite interesting new school system. There would be the first grade learning community, which gets more protected spaces and still has 4 pondering workshops for each class, and they have a learning laboratory in the middle of it. And the third and the second one, they already get the protected spaces decrease, but the shared spaces increase. And finally, in the 4th grade, there are no traditional classrooms anymore. The shared space is the main space where you would share your experience, you would learn from each other. And from there we rework all the programming you usually get from the authorities and mix them to get finally exactly to the same square meters, but we arrange them totally. So we fight, for example, in schools that the programs distance themselves to get from each single room, but to think more conceptually about schools. And we work alternatives from there. And on the programming, we support also with atmospheric quality workshops. I just go quickly through it. And again, here we, of course, do work out where are the priorities of the school community and the authorities. Where do we get together? And we never do go for compromise, but we try to get the desires and these different works together to get a really rich result. The kids are extremely important in the school process and in the housing. In housing projects, they hardly have any voice, which I find terrible, and I'm fighting for it. And sometimes we do have hands-on projects. And the further you get in the project, the more serious, of course, getting the tools and the rounds, and but we try to keep the creativity of the space, to keep people open and not think, okay, we can't anyway afford it. And say, no, you say what you want, we think about how we can afford it. So now I have examples through participatory architecture, 3 minutes. Okay. I anyway plan to show them extremely briefly. We work in this participatory processes by developing a neighborhood, housing project, school campus, and kindergarten. And what is always the same, we always try to get a wide range of people together. And that was developing a neighborhood, and even after our workshop, they couldn't stop discussing, develop the housing for it. I just go quickly through it. Or our very first game we used in student housing, where we redeveloped for more than 600 students, 13 houses, 13 buildings. Now actually, now at the moment we are on a high rise. These are now all projects we do at this very moment in the office. We opened up this 60s building to the outside to give students more space of communication, which was, for example, extremely the key point of their needs, and outside and inside. And interesting was to reload this participation after we've done it 2007 the first time, to do it 2015 again, how things might have changed, and there were changes, which of course this opens up a new interesting discussion, and it's more into sharing spaces, less private, more in the semi-public. Or our most difficult project at the moment, a school campus with 5 extremely different users, where we develop, I'm nearly through. we develop, for example, a house for the young, school for the, Förderschule, for a little bit difficult kids, then kids who should return to school, so to speak, who are left in the system, lost the system. And the very last we are now in the process is one on kindergarten, which hopefully looks soon like that. In the moment, a few weeks ago, we had the roofing ceremony, and what was really nice there, that the participation here is totally part of the life of the kindergarten, and the kids of this kindergarten, every week they come back to the site and explore it. And that's really fantastic to see how it's all in this one world, to get people, to show them how they can be part of shaping their environment, to show them some self-empowerment, and that the very small ones start to get the notion that they can actually, do a difference. Thank you.